Sure. Thank you very much. 1 second. Let me share the screen here. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And before the panel discussion, so let us acknowledge we're very grateful that today's panel discussion, we can have this panel discussion on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh peoples. So, and then we have the two panelists here, Loretta Seto and then Dr. Ali Wang. Last year, during the 2021 Explore Asian Month, Asian Heritage Month, and I invited a number of Asian opera singers and performers. And but however, and I was declined by many of them. The reason is not that they're not interested or they were not interested. They were actually very interested. The barrier is the language. So that actually prompted today's, I have this idea. So we do have not only like artists, writers, and then, however, some of them, even the average immigrant here, then they're voiceless. And I appreciate that we have historians and archaeologists studying our ancestors, but I don't want to leave the job to done. I think each individual, even with their mother tongue, can still tell their own stories. So today we have Loretta Seto, who writes primarily a writer, primarily in English language, and also Dr. Ali Wang, who's also a writer who writes in the Chinese language. So we have this interesting dialogue. And so in the name of Voice for the Voiceless. So let me introduce Loretta. Loretta Seto is an award-winning playwright, as well as a children's book author, fiction, and a screenwriter. Her play, Dirty Old Women, was a smash hit at the 2014 Vancouver Fringe Festival, enjoying a completely sold-out run, as well as winning the Pick of the Fringe and the Couch Invading the Fringe Award. The play was remounted in April 2016 at the Couch, again selling out its entire run and garnering more positive reviews. Her latest play, The Ones We Leave Behind, was selected and produced by Vancouver Asian Canadian Theatre and had a successful run at the Couch in October 2018. Loretta is the author of the children's picture book Mooncakes, as well as the co-founder of Wet Ink Collective, an initiative that supports the creation, development, and production of new plays written by women. Having earned her MFA in creative writing at UBC, Loretta is excited by the new challenges she faces writing in different genres. She lives in Vancouver, BC. And also our Dr. Ali Wang here. And Dr. Ali Wang, a writer, also PhD in ancient Chinese literature. Dr. Ali Wang has published hundreds of articles about Tang poets and over 10 books, including the study of the Jiao Fang in the Tang Dynasty, a prose collection named Leaving the Best Time with You, as well as the translation of the poet Zheng Zhen and the rise of Chinese modernity. And Wang also has hosted cultural and educational seminars at the Vancouver Public Library and many other community organizations. So let's start with Loretta. So I'll play this video clip for, sorry about that. 1 second, I need to share this sound. So I'll stop and then share right away. I'll share again this sound. For some reason. Oh, yes, it's loading. So
they're round like the moon. They make a circle for me and Mama and Baba. They make a circle for my family. Outside, we light paper lanterns. I made one all by myself, using my favorite colors. The lanterns and stars light up the sky. The moon makes everything shine like silver and water. In our backyard, we sit together in a big chair. We watch small dusty clouds brush the moon's face. The wind shakes the leaves. Shh, shh. Baba pulls the blanket close. Mama and Baba tell me about Chang'e, the woman who lives on the moon. Long ago the world had 10 suns in the sky, and it became too hot and dry. The Jade Emperor asked his most skilled archer, Ho Yi, to help. Ho Yi aimed high and far. He shot down 9 of the suns, and the world became safe again. As a reward, Ho Yi wanted the elixir of eternal life. But Ho Yi was not a good man. He was cruel, and he wanted to live forever so that he could rule the people of China. Ho Yi had saved the world from becoming a desert. The Jade Emperor had no choice but to grant Ho Yi his wish.
So, Loretta, and obviously Mooncakes is based on, well, Chinese and Asian heritage. So can you, and also you're a playwright, so can you elaborate more on the 2 plays you wrote and then maybe other interesting project you're currently working on?
Yeah, thank you. Mooncakes is the children's book that I've written. And as you can see, it has Chinese heritage elements to it. It tells a story of a little girl who celebrates the Moon Festival with her parents in her own unique way. And her parents tell her these Chinese myths that are associated with the moon. I've also had 2 plays produced at the Cultch, which is a theater venue in Vancouver. And the first one was called Dirty Old Woman. It's a comedy about an older woman who starts to date a younger man and all the fallout that happens when she starts to do that. And the second play that I had produced in 2018 was called The Ones We Leave Behind. And that told a story about a woman who, I guess it was a mother and daughter story, actually. So the mother is an elderly woman who lives alone, and her daughter is trying to find out more about what happened to her father, because her mother has been quite secretive about the father's disappearance when this woman was a child. And so it's a story about isolation, about family, and in many ways about immigration and the impacts that can have on people moving to North America in this case.
Okay, thank you.
You want to hear about a current project I'm working on?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
I'm working on a full-length screenplay right now entitled Kung Fu Zombies. And it's a mashup of the horror, kung fu, and also comedy genres. And it's sort of my response to the anti-Asian hate that has unfortunately grown most in recent years, and particularly during the pandemic here. So it's something that I'm actively working on right now.
Sure. And let's share it again and then move on to, so Dr. Ali Wang, can you turn on your camera? Yes. All right. So Dr. Ali Wang, you are a writer of many articles and also over 10 books. Can you tell us, like, you know, your translation work and also your books, and give us some interesting kind of taste of what you have been working on and what you're currently working on?
Thank you. So today is my 10 years anniversary of my immigration life. 10 years ago, I think I at 6:15 something p.m. we arrived. We entered our house now, entered the door of this house, and we live here for 10 years. At that time, my son only 6 years old. And now he already studied in grade 11 and know everything. And for me, from the moment that we began our new life in Canada, I don't know what I will do, and I even have no plan about my writing. But things happened. So in the first year, we learned like daily life things and language. and a driving license. And from the second year, I finished my PhD study and began the writing. First, I writing about my academic study, so like the Jiao Fang in Tang Dynasty, and then I helped a professor worked in UBC. I helped him to translate Zheng Zhen, the poet Zheng Zhen, and about the Chinese modernist. And then I find that there are a lot of interesting things in the Canada, in here. I found there are some difference, between Canadian education system and the Chinese education system. So I began to write those short story, and the editor find me. At first, I began to write in Chinese newspaper, and then some Chinese editor here found me because they came back China and they read my article on newspaper and found, oh, it's the writers in Vancouver, so they contact me. And then I began my column here from 2016. So my first book was published in 2015. I mean, my first book in my immigrant life. So at that time, I thought I had a plan, like 10 years, 10 books. I hope when I finished my 10 years immigration life, I can publish the 10 books. But unfortunately, till now, I only published seven books. So I hope in future 2 years, I can finish my plan. But I already have some 3 manuscripts in my hand. So I'm waiting for to be published, those books. And the writing here in Canada, I think being a Chinese writer, the advantage for me is I'm familiar the Chinese things and the Chinese tradition culture, and I'm learning the new culture here. So this helped me a lot. So I could write some interesting story, or I mean, make readers like me. They find, oh, that stories are different. So that is a short report for my 10 years writing. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wang. And so back to Loretta, can you maybe tell us and your understanding of the importance of cultural heritage?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
The importance of cultural heritage to you as a writer, and also a writer with Chinese background, but you're writing in English, and then you're telling the English Anglophones about not all about Chinese stories, but I mean somehow related with Asian heritage.
Yeah, I mean, for me, my cultural heritage is just completely part of my identity. So as a writer, then it's difficult not to include some of that in my stories. So most of my work, at least in the last, I would say 10 years, incorporates some angle of my Chinese heritage. So my book Mooncakes there, for example, and with Dirty Old Woman, it was an interesting story because that play, which did really well at the Fringe Festival, the first production of it was actually an all-white cast because I had contacts in the theater community that I worked with, and they were very interested in collaborating with me on the project. So we kind of went ahead with that. But then because we had a second opportunity to put the play up at the Cultch, then it was Vancouver Asian Canadian Theatre was interested in collaborating with me. And so we wanted to make sure that there was some Asian representation on stage, which I think is really important. And so in the second production, we had one cast member as an Asian person. And in that particular play, Chinese culture was not a prominent feature, but I think that just to have some representation on stage was important, that, you know, we can tell these stories and they don't have to necessarily incorporate culture, obviously, but just to see the different faces on stage, I think is very important. And then my last play was basically almost all Asian, and it told the story of a mother and daughter. The mother who had immigrated from China, and the daughter who was born in Canada, and their relationship was kind of a rocky one, where the father had abandoned the family when the daughter was young, and it was related to their immigration to Canada. So for me, it's very important, and it's hard, like I said, to separate necessarily my culture from my work. Oh, I'm sorry, Jimmy. I think your mic is muted.
Yeah, thank you, Loretta. And so back to Dr. Wang, and so the same question. So what is important? Why is cultural heritage important from your perspective?
Oh yeah, so for me, I think first, I think the difference between human being and animals is the culture, not the tools using of finding something. So culture made the people's difference, like each community, each group, each nationality, or each country had their own culture. So that difference help us strengthen our identity. So I think a culture is a kind of guidance for our like thinking, action, or talking something. Another word is heritage is a root. They said no history, no future, but I think no heritage, no future. It's the same thing. For me, another reason I think culture can help if we familiar with our own tradition culture. That can help us to know the new culture, like in Canada, because human beings always have the same common sense. Like we know there are Chinese sentence like 己所不欲，勿施于人. The translation is what you don't want to done you, don't do to others, right? So it's the same thing in Canada. And another example is like 推己及人, consider others in one's own place. So it's the same. So we could learn the wisdom from the traditional culture, not only those superficial things or style. So we could learn the more, and it will be helpful to us to integrate into the new country. Educated person always be like it, I think, in any place, any country. So, and the third reason is like just like I mentioned, because I know the traditional culture well, I know the heritage well, and so that helped me writing. Yeah, thank you.
And so, so for Loretta, so how do we tell stories of our ancestors, and or even close to, like, you know, our parents, our cousins, right, and even our friends, and who probably do not have the capacity to write in the official languages? So how hard is it to tell those stories, and how can we do to help such storytelling easier? And so do you have anything to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you know, it's difficult if you are not a writer, for example, an artist, and you want to share your stories, then I mean, I think that these days it is easier to tell stories. I think that, you know, with the advent of technology and social media and access to those things, people can share their stories in that way. But in terms of like as being an artist or a writer, if we want to share other people's stories, let's say our parents' stories, grandparents' stories, you know, friends, families, cousins, for example, you mentioned there. I mean, I think an important element of that is, of course, to listen. So, you know, people that are telling you their stories, that's a real gift, I think. And to, you know, it's not necessarily that, you know, you're going to take everybody's individual story and write their story, but I think that to kind of collect stories and to honor them, it's important. Like, I think that for me, I know that my work has been influenced a lot from hearing my parents' experiences when they immigrated from China in the 1950s. And so even though I haven't written specifically about their story, like their individual story, just what I've learned from them and what they had to endure coming to this new country at that time has kind of influenced the way I think about the stories that I'm telling. And, you know, I think that these days you can record stories. So if you have, you know, your parents or your grandparents or aunts or uncles or anybody that you feel it's important to get their story recorded, or you know, that they don't disappear, that they don't go when the person goes, then we can record these stories for, you know, the future, to share with children, to share with others. And so, yeah, I think it's like partly the artist's responsibility to tell those stories, but I also think that people have that capacity now to do it themselves, so they can take that power into their own hands, especially, you know, these days with the technology that we have readily available to us.
So I think I'll encourage more women writers or female writers to join your Wet Ink Collective. You have this initiative support of creation and development production of new plays written by women.
Yeah, that's really been a very important part of what I've tried to advocate for, is women telling their stories, and, you know, visible minority women telling their stories. So yeah, we did create this initiative called Wet Ink Collective, which supports female writers in writing stage plays and also screenplays. And I mean, there are other organizations out there that support different groups. And, you know, I would encourage people, if they feel that they want to tell a story, then to seek out those opportunities. It's always easier to write your story or tell your story, I think, when you have other people supporting you in an encouraging way. So I would really, yeah, I would recommend joining something if you feel that you have a story to tell.
Sure. Just asking, do you have any workshops? Because some people may be kind of agreeing in terms of writing plays, or even writing kind of a or medium-sized kind of stories, right? So are there like workshops like provided by either you or some organizations that they can learn to hone their skills?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our Wet Ink Collective does run writing workshops. So we hire professional writers to facilitate our small groups, usually maximum 12. I mean, during the pandemic, it's been a bit harder to run these workshops. We did do some Zoom workshops, but we prefer meeting in person. But we do have those workshops available, and we encourage, you know, women to apply if they're interested. And I know there are other groups out there that offer workshops, even informal ones. I mean, just if you do a quick search on Facebook, for example, they have groups that they've formed first, you know, for fiction writers, for poetry writers, screenwriters, playwrights, to collaborate, to communicate, just to encourage people to write. So I think that you could definitely look into those. And then there are, of course, the more formal settings. If you are you know, interested in pursuing education in more formalized education, then there are lots of programs. There's SFU has a writing program, UBC, Langara, like they all have some kind of writing program that they offer, both in their kind of regular curriculum, but also kind of their continuing education curriculum.
Thank you. So back to Dr. Wang, and before we answer the question, how hard is it to tell the story about us, and then how to help and then make this storytelling easier. And you mentioned about the cultural heritage, and before this panel discussion, and you told me you found there's some cultural background. I mean, like that's why we have lots of traditional cultural and societies of that based on clans associations, like family associations, and can you maybe briefly elaborate on that?
Oh, you mean 同乡会, right? Yeah. People, Chinese immigrants.
Hometown association.
Yeah, hometowns. So it's very interesting. Each province, even some cities, like Shanghai or Beijing, those big, or Shenzhen, those big cities. People from there always like to organize some association according to the like hometown. So people came from the same place, they want to gather in the new country. So it's interesting. I think this is also kind of tradition, because Chinese tradition, culture, and the society is different from the Western. For Chinese, it's based on blood relation and the clan. So people share the same last name, always think we are the same family in the far away ago, like that. So due to the I think it's due to the weak population mobility in the past. So people live in the same area, usually share some same relatives. So that make people very close, think, oh, okay, so we came from the same city, oh, so we are closer. So it's very interesting. Yeah, so do you want me to introduce this?
No, I just find it quite fascinating because it is quite unique. For instance, I only know a very small number of a similar like last name or clan kind of association in the Anglophone world, and they have a Mackenzie Society, I believe, and a Churchill Society, and somehow there's a little bit of association because of your name and your cultural background, but it's very prominent among Chinese immigrants. Then there are lots of such hometown associations. So there is a cultural interpretation or explanation behind this. So thank you. So in terms of the storytelling, so how hard is it to tell other people, like people's stories? And I know you have written a number of bios for different persons. Yes.
Yeah. So. I agree with Loretta's opinion, yeah, that people can write down their own story by themselves. But I also think, yeah, it's a gift to me to hear about other people's story. I can learn something, not only the personal experience, but also the history things. For example, I helped the poet, yeah, I think he's quite famous in Chinese poet world, Xian. He came from Taiwan, but originally he came from China mainland, and then he moved to the Taiwan, and then he moved here. So I think I used 2 or 3 years to help him write his memoir, but unfortunately not about his whole life, because his memory became worse and worse. So we only pick up some like maybe 10 years, yeah, so very short, but it's interesting. When the book published in the China mainland, some reader contact me, and they try to contact the poet through me, yeah, like that. So I think help somebody write a memoir is a very interesting thing, but it's not easy, because you should when you listen and when you write down, and you should try to distinguish which part is true, which part is some like not a real fake. But people's memory always always twist or change something. So I also helped another person to write his memoir. I think that is last year, 2020, in 2020. He came here almost 40 years. So it's a very typical story for the immigrants, is how a grassroots can, with his effort and good luck and get some successful life. He retired as a famous entrepreneur. So for his story, I need I need more time to distinguish the real part and something not really real things, and try to help him to analyze and try to help him to go back to the first, the original facts and who's who and who's who, like that. So it's not either. I think maybe write a fiction story, maybe more either. But it's interesting because I think every person's history back then. So a single person's history made all of our history in the age. So we couldn't only read that formal things, because when I, my major is Asian literature study. When I write down my essays, I read a lot of formal history, but I still need to read something like not so formal. Yeah, and that helped me a lot.
Thank you. So should language barrier, should language be the barrier in terms of prevent someone from writing the person's own story? Or I think it's also quite a privilege to have to actually have the assistance from a professional writer, right? And then I think each individual ought to probably more rely on themselves to tell good stories. Just maybe tell stories, and eventually I think good stories will surface.
Yes, you mean language barrier? I'm not sure. So for me, I write in Chinese, and when I heard and they tell me how that our communication language is Chinese. But I think you mean for those people, they don't think they're sorry.
Just writing in your own mother language.
Yeah. But I want to say for those individual, for those person, maybe they think they're not a professional writer, so they don't dare to write down something. But I encourage them to be brave, just to try to write, and then they can organize those things. So because not everyone is so lucky can find somebody else to help them to write. There's tons of effort. I think Loretta knows that. So it's a ton of effort, not only the time and your spirit or something. So I think I told them I write, but I write something not only using my time, is using my life. Yeah.
So for Loretta, and do you have anything to say to those ones who limit themselves and by thinking that just because I don't have the language skill, just because I don't have the professional skill in terms I'm not a trained writer, so therefore I don't know where to start? Any suggestions?
Sorry, pardon me. So speaks a little bit slowly, please. Yeah.
No, I that's the question to Loretta.
Yeah, I think that it can be intimidating for sure if you feel that you're not, a professional writer or aren't able to tell your story you believe in a way that is going to be compelling and get people interested. I think that what I would say to that is that if you feel compelled by your story, then you should tell it. So it's, don't worry about not being a professional writer. Don't worry about not, being a, screenplay writer or whatever. Just if you feel compelled by it, you should tell it. And I think that, writing is one skill, but there are many ways to tell a story. So you can tell your story orally. You can tell your story through illustrations. You can tell your story through dance. I mean, there are many, many ways that you can tell a story. And so if one of those mediums appeals to you, or you feel that you're more comfortable or have more skill in that particular medium, then maybe that's a place to start. And as I said, there's no limit, I think, these days to who you can share your work with, because we have so many opportunities to put things up online and share things, not with just friends, but, with the globe. And you never know who might see your work or who might hear your story, or even if you tell us, a short story verbally on video and you post it up, you just never know who it could reach. And I think we have seen all have seen examples of that. So I think for me, at least, even though I'm not a huge social media person, I feel like it really has empowered people in a way that we haven't seen in years past, that, people's voices can be heard, even if they don't have these kind of official channels, and for better and for worse. Like, it's not always good what gets disseminated out there. But I think at least, if you have a story you want to tell, then just find the medium that you feel works for you. And it might not be the written word. It might be some other way that you want to tell your story. And then you just, I mean, my suggestion would be just to start to make inroads, like do a little bit here, do a little bit there, and see where it takes you. And then there's also the other option of collaborating with other people. So if you find like-minded people who might be interested in telling your story, or maybe a combination of stories, then there are those options too. Because I think, yeah, everybody I feel has their story to tell. And I don't feel that people should be limited because they feel that they don't have the skill or the capacity. Like, don't feel that way is what I would say. Just, tell your story. If you feel compelled, I would say tell it.
Thank you. And I remember, like, almost 10 years ago, then I was at SFU for my graduate study, and then I think we have a PhD candidate who's a TA and lecturing about journal, how to, like, do daily journals. And then she talked about, illustrations and even pictures and the writing short paragraphs and the importance. So, however, I clearly remember at the moment, like, the whole class, the cohort, and were completely confused. But I 10 years later, I think now I understand the importance of these like small skills. Like, you need to be persistent and then do that every day. And after a while, you realize how many stories actually you have collected, and then they become your treasure. And then you can select, those most fascinating ones, and then tell the story to others. So thank you. And so now I want to open the floor to the audience. So we're 5:52. We have probably 10 minutes. I think we're well on time. And so any questions from the audience for our panelists? And also please raise your hand and type in the chat. And if Jasper can kindly remind me, I only can see 5 windows or here. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
I could jump in real quick. I just wanted to say thank you both for sharing your work with us tonight. And Loretta, I really love what you said at the end about encouraging people to tell stories, no matter what your confidence level is with language or writing. I think that's so true and so important. You know, as I aspire to write myself, you know, here and there, and I always, whenever I start, it's hard to start and it's hard to keep going, and it's really encouraging to hear you say that. So thanks for that.
Oh, I'm glad to hear you write, and I would encourage everybody to write or tell their stories. And I think I just wanted to go back to something Jimmy had said about journaling, because I think that's really sometimes for a lot of writers, sometimes that's just the start of their process. They journal and they, you know, have random thoughts and observations that they write down. And then when they go back, those are what they draw their stories from. So something that sparks their interest or some observation they've made, and that's the genesis for a new story. So even journaling, I think, is a great way to start if you're interested in writing.
Judy, I saw that you had your hand up. Did you want to ask a question? Or? Sorry, I thought you did. My mistake.
Anything else the two panelists want to add?
We have a quick question in the chat. That comes from Nono Shen. I can read it out loud. Thanks for Loretta and Dr. Wang to share your journeys. I have a quick question. Do we have any hub or association specifically dedicated to Asian storytellers? Thanks.
I can just offer the two that I know of. There is for theater, there's Vancouver Asian Canadian Theater, and they're very supportive of playwrights. They have a program that they call, it's called the MSG Lab. And so every, year they accept, 3 to 6 different writers to develop their work. So that's one venue for playwrights. And I think there's also the Vancouver Asian Canadian Writers Workshop. They also support writers of prose, I believe. So it's more like poetry, fiction, maybe nonfiction, so prose writing. Then they offer support to Asian writers and storytellers. Those are just two that come to mind.
Yeah, so I know, so we have association for Chinese writer. Name is the Canadian Chinese Writer Association. So it's organized for a long time, I think, like 20 something years. Actually, I think I can begin my formal writing things is from there. The first year, I forgot to mention just now. The first year when I lived here, I joined their competition, writing competition, and got 2 rewards in the next year. So I thought, okay, maybe I have some talent to write. So then I began my writing. Yeah, they have a website, and maybe I can share in the chat room. Thank you, Nono.
I think Letitia raised her hand first.
Oh, thank you. I just want to say that a very good opportunity to open channels to these writers and performers is exactly us. It's the Vancouver Asian Heritage Month Society. We have a project that we started in 2020 that is the yummiest Asian food, where we ask people to tell us their story and talk about what was their favorite food and how that is the pandemic lockout. So I think that we are a great channel. And as well as libraries, the brand new open Chinese Storytelling Museum. And there are many other organizations in different communities that are open up to writers and people in general to tell their stories and have some voice and have something to say about their own story and the stories of many Pan-Asian communities that need to express what who they are, what they have not just suffered, but what they have enjoyed in their trip and in their life here in Canada. I just wanted to say that VAHMS is really open to welcome all these stories and keep them in our archives. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Leticia. Shahid, please. Shahid, you raised your hand.
Oh, thank you, Jimmy. First of all, big thank you to our panelists and for their excellent presentation and great work that they are doing. We are very delighted to have you at VAHMS at this AGM. These stories very much resonate with a lot of people's experiences that they had before coming to Canada and becoming part of this vibrant society. Just a general question that I have seen, like as Leticia and other people have pointed out, that we have different forums, and it's extremely important that these stories are shared in different forums in the form of theater or art and museum and written stories. So with all these, of course, there's a lot more room to do that. But will you still consider these people voiceless? Because I'm just concerned about I'm just wondering about the word voiceless. Thank you.
And one of the two panelists want to comment?
I can say something, I guess. I mean, I honestly don't think that, it's difficult for some people to tell their stories. So there's no question about that. And I think that, depending on their situation, it might be maybe impossible. But I do think that there are, as I mentioned before, I think there are many ways to tell stories. And so I guess maybe the purpose of this panel is to try to dissuade people from feeling as if they were voiceless. Because I think that, maybe many people feel like they don't know how to tell their story or to whom to tell their story. And hopefully, we can go out there as ambassadors to tell people that if you have a story to tell, even if it's just your personal story, and it doesn't seem that it's, that big or grand, in the scheme of world events, they're still important. And it's, even if it's just for your own family history, like to tell your story to your children or to your grandchildren, or to share with, a friend or a family member. Like, I think all of those types of storytelling are really vital, because it kind of is, it's history. It's the lived history of those people. And we hopefully can learn from history. And, that's our goal, I hope. And so, like, for me, I would just tell people, if you feel that you have a story to tell, don't limit yourself. Don't think that your story is not important enough, because every story counts. And even I said, even if it's just within your family, even if it's just so that they know what's happened, it's Yeah, to me, it's so important to know your family's history. If you're lucky enough to be able to access those. For me, like I feel, I was born in Vancouver. My parents immigrated from China. And unfortunately, I lost my language of Chinese because as I was growing up in, at that time, very few Asian children were around me when I went to school. And I learned very quickly from a very young age, like, don't speak Chinese because people don't know what you're saying. And so over the course of the years in my youth, I lost the language. And I really regret that because I lost access to my grandparents' stories other than through my parents. Like they told me, I guess, some stories about my grandparents, but I couldn't access those stories directly because they didn't speak English. I didn't speak Chinese. And so it's a regret. It's a big regret of mine. So, I feel that if there is any way, just to share stories, like, they can be bigger stories, but they can be small stories. Just share them because I think that it's something that makes a difference in people's lives, even if it's just your family's lives, but it could be beyond that too. I mean, even if you just reach a few other people, I think that makes a difference. Sorry, I went on a bit long there, but
yeah, I like to. So I agree with Loretta's saying, and I think each person are special, and each individual's life is unique. And for the immigration, especially for the first generation immigration, I thought you might, like me, sometimes I feel weak because the language barrier and the culture difference, everything is new and everything we need to learn. We have no network here. And sometimes I feel it's weak, but writing can support me and my own story can support me. So I think if everyone treasure your own story, you treasure it, you write down it. Whatever you talk to, you say to the others, just write down it, even in your own language. So that is like a kind of take care of yourself because your history is only yours. And if we pass away, nobody know that, right? So if we write down our own story, we can add some information to the formal history. And we also can add some information to our next generation. And the most important things I think is can help us become more stronger, yeah. So stronger. So I think so writing is very easy, like Loretta says, with the technical things. So we encourage every person try to write down your own story and help maybe our old generation try to find their own story. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Loretta, and also thank you all the participants of this event. And so I think this conversation, this discussion is not exhaustive, and then we'll, I think, sometime down the road, we'll reconvene and then share our new stories or old stories. So thank you very much. And I hand back to Jasper or Letitia. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jimmy. And thank you, Loretta, and thank you, Ali, for the presentation tonight. That is the end of our time together, everyone. So it's been great to see you all. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting VAHMS. And we will see you soon in 2022. Bye.